Hello. Well, the old connection is I don't know, it's tough to say. I mean, it seems pretty spotty to me, but whenever I go to check the connection on my end and do a speed test, it's good. It's like it should be fine. So I'm not sure if the problem is on maybe the problem is on YouTube right now, on YouTube's end. And we'll see if we can work through it. If there are any major drop offs, you know, the stream it might not be viable. What can you say? But we'll try to work through it for now. How's everybody doing? Can you hear me all right? Got the I got the green going in the background. We're changing things up here. It's been a couple it's been a while since I last streamed. I've been kind of burned out recently. I'm still kind of burned out, to be honest with you, but I like streaming, and I want to do more of it. So fuck it. I swear, I think it was like Wednesday morning. I woke up with just like the worst kink in my neck, and it won't go away. And I can hardly turn my neck this way. So that's fun. I like the jacket. Thank you. I've had it for a while. Looks like I need to fix the collar. I'm going to grab some water really quick. It's so weird. The stream will just die. It'll say 0 KB per second, and then it'll come back and it tries to like overcompensate. Josie Posey loved the Disco Elysium videos. I spent a good week or so rewatching them. Wow, that's thank you. It kind of blows my mind, when I put out like a really long analysis video. It kind of blows my mind that like when I look at the analytics and I see the what they call audience retention, which is basically just how long people have watched the video. And for my longer analysis videos, it's like it just blows my mind that there's like some percentage of people that have watched them all the way through, let alone watch them multiple times. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, I do. The Mook is asking if I do stretches. I do. I stretch every day, um, and I do. I specifically try to do neck stretches as well. But I don't know. I think I just slept on it wrong or something. Hmm. I don't really have any plans today. I was just gonna. It's just a casual chill stream. I don't really. I've been working on my next video. I've got a few thousand words at this point, so it is in progress. People ask me. I think YouTube. I think really fosters a viewership of people who have short attention spans, and it's not anybody's fault. I think it's just the way the medium encourages you to consume videos. But it's like I've done a few live streams in the past month, and people seem to think that's all I do now. But I've come out with like at least one edited video a month for the past, I don't know, for the past year or so. So I don't know what whenever I do a live stream, people are just like, "You're a streamer now?" All of a sudden, it's like they have to put you in this one box because they don't understand that it's possible to do both, I guess. I don't know. It's weird. But I just try to explain to people, like, I mean, I put out edited videos. I just put out one in February, and I put out another one in January. So I'm gonna try to shoot for the end of March with this one. We'll see how it goes. It seems like it might be a bit on the longer side, so it might take a bit longer. Yeah, and I'm not trying to shit on people with like attention issues. It's really more, I think it's more about YouTube and how YouTube encourages a certain mentality. I don't think it's any one individual's fault when it comes to that sort of thing. I mean, certain component of this is my fault, because I don't know, of the way I brand the channel. Maybe it is miscommunicating something. Who knows? And I like, I guess the reason I am trying to stream more is it kind of seems, okay, for starters, I think when I started my channel, I was really really kind of had a lot of social anxiety around the idea of doing a live stream. But I started my channel in 2016, so it's kind of like it's been a while, right? And I guess I sporadically did live streams over the course of my channel. And now that I'm doing them, I kind of enjoy it. And I want to do more of them. I like interacting with people in like semi real time, I think having that kind of back and forth is maybe it might have something to do with the fact that I'm like crammed into a 1-bedroom apartment in the middle of a pandemic. It's nice to interact with people, in other words. And it actually, I think it kind of helps with my quote unquote productivity as far as putting out new videos goes, because yeah, I don't know, it's nice to interact with people, even if it's just like once a week. There is, I mean, people talk about the whole parasocial thing. Um, yeah. The thing is, I mean, I think the whole parasocial thing is a bit more complicated than people make it out to be. Because it isn't as though you cannot foster real relationships through the internet. Obviously that's wrong. But I don't, I don't think anyone. Well, it's the YouTuber and critic Shannon Strucci, the film critic, was she really popularized the idea of parasocialism or parasocial dynamics when it comes to bigger like streamers and bigger like YouTube personalities. And those videos are really good. They're really good. But I think what happens over time is people get introduced to that concept in their head, and they start maybe oversimplifying things to a certain degree, to where any interaction on the internet is like evokes a certain like parasocial dynamic, and it's like I don't know. I have 40 people watching the stream right now. I feel like I can interact with you people pretty directly, and obviously there is like there is this dynamic where if someone gives me money, that's a whole different level of interaction, right? But I usually make it a point on my streams to just interact with the chat regardless of whether you're giving me money or not, because I think that whole like super chat dynamic is kind of screwed up. But of course, once you reach a certain level, then the parasocial aspects do start to kick in. If I start getting to the point where like 1,000 people are watching my stream, then yeah, it's pretty much impossible to have like a straightforward communication with most of the people on that stream, because there's just too many people. But yeah, Shannon Strucci's videos about parasocial relationships are solid. They're like really good, really informative, and really well done. It's just, I think sometimes when people put things out there like that, and they become very popular conceptions, they tend to get watered down or oversimplified in some way. Is the stream quality okay for everybody? It does seem to be dropping off occasionally on my end, but I have a delay set up, so hopefully it's not too bad. I feel like literally as I said that, the connection dropped. Great. It's always something. I guess I should let people know that I'm streaming. I always forget to do that. Ugh. What else is new? Stream quality is fine. Thank you. Thanks for letting me know. give it a tweet. I'm going to go get some ice for my neck because it's actually killing me right now. Taking some Tylenol. Acetaminophen, excuse me. Don't let the days go by. Acetaminophen. Destroying your liver. I'm going to get sued by the company now. I'm going to get sued by Bush for singing that parody song, and I'm going to get sued by the manufacturer of generic Tylenol. Oh, that's cold. Oh, God. Oh. Gonna have to hold that here for a little while. So, yeah. This is weird. How's everybody doing? Let's see. Left click shift says, you were talking about a new video a second ago. What is your process? Do you do outlines or bullet points? Yeah, I don't mind you asking that at all. It kind of depends on the subject matter, and it depends on, like, I guess I'll just give you an example. I definitely did outlines for the PetScop videos. And the PetScop videos, that analysis really kind of lends itself to a certain format. So because I would just do what is called a close reading or a close analysis of the videos themselves, and then I would have at the end a final thoughts segment, and I would usually so that sort of structure really was kind of built into the premise of the way I was approaching those videos. And then for the final thoughts, I would always have a rough outline of what I wanted to say. Usually I would have a sort of introduction. I would have several different topics I would like to discuss, and then I would wrap things up, and I would try to sort of tie it together. Sometimes there's a fair amount of research involved if I want to discuss something in particular that's related. So, for instance, there are some topics in the PetScop videos that I wanted to touch on. Certain economic issues I wanted to discuss. Certain psychological issues. So, yeah. A fair amount of research can go into it. The shorter videos, so if I do a video that's like 7 to 10 minutes, I might not do an outline. I might just write it. But if I'm doing something that's like an hour or like 45 minutes to an hour, yeah, I usually have to kind of think about how I'm going to structure the video. Even if it's just like, oh, I want to discuss this topic, then I want to discuss this topic. So I might have it, I might just have different segments in a video. I'm trying to think. I've done that with like my Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared analysis videos. Okay. Oh, it's cold. It's cold, but it'll feel better. And I'm going to do it on my shoulder. That'll be easier to hold there. Oh, I feel like I'm falling apart. I really do. What is my preferred thing to call me? You can call me Dave or David. You can call me by my channel name too. I don't care. It's fine. So someone recommended ibuprofen. The issue, I think I am actually not supposed to take ibuprofen because I have ulcerative colitis, and I've heard you're not supposed to take ibuprofen if you have ulcerative colitis. It's just one of those things. Is something up with my health? No, I just have a kink in my neck. I'm just having neck problems, so I'm icing it right now. But thank you for your concern. Oh, left click shift. You're thinking of The Mirror or Children of the Mirror by Wham City. Yeah, that's a great series. Yeah, don't hug me. I'm scared has some culty stuff in it too, but I think they're thinking of that Wham City thing. Oh, oh, that's cold. Right. I really try not to take non-steroidal anti-inflammatories too much. Um, Really, this is like I just took two Tylenol. That's the first time this. I think that's I maybe took Tylenol twice this week, but it's not something I do like every day. Yeah. I get unsolicited advice about autoimmune stuff. Yeah. I don't mind getting unsolicited advice, I guess. It's just you have to take everything with a grain of salt because these things are so tricky. Um, Speaking personally as someone with ulcerative colitis, I have found a lot of people are convinced that you can alter your diet and treat your ulcerative colitis that way. Um, and if that works for you, that's cool. It's never, it has never worked for me. I require medication. It doesn't matter what I do with my diet. And people who insist that you can alter your diet and change your situation as far as inflammatory bowel disease goes, all I have to say is that doesn't work for everybody. Some people absolutely need medication. Essential oils, yeah. Now, I could certainly. I've been trying to eat healthy, for sure, but that's not gonna change the underlying disease that I have. Unfortunately, just accept it. I'm gonna have it for the rest of my life. Healing crystals, yeah. I mean, I'll try whatever, honestly. Ooh, okay. Okay, I iced it for like, I feel like that was a few minutes. Took my nose spray. Oh, okay. I iced it. Feels a little bit better now. Still stiff, but that helped a little bit. Oh, we got John the Lit Crit guy here. What's up? If y'all aren't aware of the Lit Crit guy, you should go subscribe to his channel. He's got a nifty YouTube channel. And there's a link. There's a link to his channel. Oh, FODMAPs? Yeah, FODMAPs is a fairly restrictive elimination diet. Interesting. But I think the idea with FODMAPs is you slowly reintroduce things into your diet to see what you can tolerate. Doing a lecture on David Cronenberg. Well, that sounds right up my alley. Cronenberg's, if people aren't aware, is a film director, kind of like really associated with body horror, um, and other sort of trippy. There's a lot of trippy stuff in his movies. In particular, Videodrome is an amazing movie. It's one of my favorites. He's got another one that's like kind of out of left field, called Existence. I think that's how you say it. It's about like a virtual reality video game that people get stuck in. Um, anyway, that movie's pretty fun. I haven't watched that in a while. Yeah, Cronenberg is extremely my shit. Yeah, Videodrome is like I could literally put that movie on at any point in time and just be like consumed by it. Especially like I won't spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it, but the way it ends is just like it is unlike any other movie I've ever seen. Yeah, it's funny because I feel like Existence, um, the Lit Crit guy is saying that Existence is his version of the Matrix, which I totally could see that. It would be interesting because I know Baudrillard really talks shit about the Matrix. I wonder if he ever saw Cronenberg's that though. I feel like he might have a higher opinion of it. It's a bit more. I don't know. I need to rewatch it. It's been like I haven't watched that movie since like probably since college, so that would be like 2010. It feels a bit more high-minded, and not in a derogatory way. It feels like Cronenberg's legitimately attempting to like explore some difficult issues about I don't know the way we perceive reality. All hail the final flesh. Is that what he says? All hail the new flesh. Is it the new flesh? I'm probably getting mixed up. Yeah, long live the new flesh. I'm gonna have to brush up on my folk horror, because I'm supposed to be having a conversation with somebody in a couple weeks, or in a week actually, about that. Yeah. Oh, Cronenberg's take on the Matrix. Yeah, that Existence. I have to rewatch that. Might have to take an edible and rewatch that. That sounds fun. Any Cronenberg movie is an experience. This stream is sponsored by Aquifer. Not really, but seriously, if Aquifer wants to pay me, I am an advocate. It's better than chapstick. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Existence sounds like a penis extending pill. Yeah. Is it just me, or are the ads on porn sites getting weirder and weirder? Like, they've always been weird, but I feel like we're getting into a whole new territory of weird with like the type of things that are going on with those ads. I don't even think I can be specific without getting my stream demonetized. Vivarium, what is that? I feel like I've heard of that before. Oh shit, I saw that movie. Vivarium, yeah. I okay. I might need to rewatch it. Um, it's definitely a trippy movie. It is maybe a bit. Its central focus seems to be sort of like the suburban, quote unquote, middle class, right? And so I get what the movie is trying to do. It's trying to sort of express in cinematic terms how this sort of lifestyle where you take out a mortgage on a house and you have a sort of lifestyle, because it's a couple considering moving into a house, and they get sort of trapped in this neighborhood. And so the film is, I think, attempting to express how that can be a trap. You can get stuck and you can become miserable because of certain things that are built into that lifestyle that you maybe didn't anticipate, or you thought would work out differently, or you thought you'd feel differently about. Yeah. It's basically about how sort of the suburban middle class lifestyle is like a trap. So I think it successfully communicates that. But I don't know. I kind of want more. I want a bit more than that, because I don't know. I feel like that premise is yes, it can be a trap, we are still kind of stuck in the sort of, I don't know, like the individualistic way of looking at it. But it does. One thing I will say about Vivarium, and I mean, I would recommend you watch it and come to your own conclusions, because I would be interested to hear other opinions about it. It does successfully communicate what it sets out to do. So on that basis, I think it's a successful film. It's probably not for everybody. Let's see. I'm always interested. I mean, I know you need to take the Rotten Tomato score with a grain of salt, but I'm always interested to see if there's a huge variance between the critic score and the audience score, because those are the movies I really want to watch, is where the audience disagrees with the critics, like, strongly, or vice versa, you know? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Vivarium's got 72% critic score, 39% audience score. So those are the type of movies that I'm really interested in, because it's like, what the hell is the disagreement about? And in this case, I feel like maybe most people perceive this movie as a bit frustrating to watch and a bit too high-minded, because they feel like they need the plot explained to them maybe a little bit more, and they need some kind of resolution. So that might be some people's issue. Yeah, I have seen Hereditary. I have a video on it, so check that out. It's pretty short. It's like a 10-minute review. I mean, long story short, I liked it. Okay, Hoystein is saying, I find it funny that I subbed to you for this from the second Petscop video years ago. And yeah, that was years ago. And after years of YouTube not showing me your videos, they showed me that debate video you did 2 weeks ago. Yeah, it's funny how that works out, right? Have I seen any good movies lately? What have I watched lately? Well, okay. I've been talking about this at various points. This is kind of not probably the answer you're looking for, but I think everyone should watch Adam Curtis's work critically. And his latest series, his latest documentary series, is called Can't Get You Out of My Head. I believe you can watch, I think you can watch the whole thing on his YouTube channel at this point. What I'll say is I have mixed feelings about Adam Curtis in general, about his work. But I think at the very least, he is attempting to explore questions that are relevant. And that alone is kind of like rare in my experience. Now, I question certain narratives he presents, and I question, I don't know, whether or not he blames certain individuals, because he really is pretty hard on certain radical leftist movements in terms of his criticism, but a lot of it is on point. It's just kind of like sometimes the way he frames things is a little problematic to me. But like I said, I think everyone should watch his movies and do so in a critical fashion. Don't take it at face value. Don't take anything at face value. You should read. Anything I recommend on this channel that you watch or read, you should do so critically. But I will say, in Adam Curtis's, to his credit, I feel as though the end of Can't Get You Out of My Head is the closest he's come to establishing a sort of positive argument for what he would like to see happen, what he would like to see done. Yeah. Yeah, because mostly, well, the formula for his documentaries is something like this, right? One man set out to change the world, and he found that actually he was living in a fantasy, right? That's sort of the formula for his documentaries, and oftentimes he's correct about that. But it is a negative form of criticism. He is explicitly saying this person was misguided or wrong for X, Y, and Z reasons. It's negative. It's a negative criticism without actually postulating, here's what I think. Yeah. At the end of Can't Get You Out of My Head, he comes fairly close to making certain arguments, making an assertion. And I guess I won't really spoil it because it's kind of a twist. If you're familiar with his work, the end of Can't Get You Out of My Head is kind of a twist. Robert says, I enjoy his docs, but he's absolutely a centrist liberal. I don't know. He's pretty hard on... I mean, he's pretty critical of neoliberalism. So I don't know what the guy says in his interviews or how he labels or how he self-identifies. And I don't really think you should take that into consideration when you're actually watching the documentary. But I've never heard of him refer to himself as a centrist. You're going to have to send me a link for that. I heard some other claim that he's a neoconservative. If you watch his work and see how critical he is of our military adventures in the Middle East, that doesn't conform to my understanding of neoconservatism. It seems like he's against what I consider to be neoconservatism. I don't really. I don't think you should. I don't think it makes sense in this context to really try and figure out if he has a cohesive ideology or ideological predilections, because he might not, and you might be looking for a pattern over the course of his filmography that's actually not there. You just have to take things, you have to specifically, like if you're going to look at things critically, you can't just go, this guy is conservative and therefore everything he does sucks. You need to actually look at the claims. You need to look at the narrative that's being presented, and you need to criticize that. And if it turns out, yes, this is a deeply conservative film, then yes, it's worth criticizing. Oh, Immortal Science of Hauntology. I love that username, by the way. Says, Tong was in cheek when he called himself a neocon. It was a joke in a specific context, but everyone repeats it because it's on his Wikipedia page. Yeah, I could see that. That makes sense. Yeah, because you know when Adam Curtis is being interviewed, he could be like, "Well, I'm a bit cheeky. I guess you could call me a neoconservative." Ha ha ha. And he's kidding, right? But I don't know. Like, it's tough because, like I said, most of his work is negative criticism. So it's unclear what he actually believes or what he wants to see happen. And it's unclear whether he even knows whether he even has a good idea of what he believes. It's unclear to me. So Hoystein is saying, David, that would be conservatism circa the 1910s, 1920s if he's anti-overseas war and pro-free market but anti-crony capitalism. He has good views but just no solutions. But it's unclear to me whether he is in favor of free market. I think that's necessarily true if you look at hypernormalization. Hypernormalization literally starts with a criticism of neoliberalism, which is predicated on like the prevalence of markets and marketizing elements of all aspects of life. But again, it's purely negative. And I have to urinate, so I'll be right back. Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but a hypernormalization literally starts with Adam Curtis explaining how in the 70s, New York City was nearly bankrupt, and the banks basically left them in the lurch. And that to me, I mean, he has someone who is in favor of unions being interviewed in a very sympathetic light in that right towards the beginning of that movie. He has someone who is in favor of unions basically being like, he's responding to criticism that the unions have like asked for too much, that they're kind of like entitled. And the guy's response is basically like, yeah, well, this criticism is coming from people who live in the Hamptons and make ridiculous sums of money, while these workers are making like, at the time, I don't know what the average wage was, but it wasn't like anything insane. But by comparison, the criticism is ridiculous. And so that union guy is, in my opinion, framed in a very sympathetic light in that film. And the banks are framed in a very unsympathetic light. So it's unclear to me that Adam Curtis is in favor of free markets, because the banks leaving the city in the lurch is an example of the free market in effect, which results in New York City having to impose austerity. Yeah, I believe the union guy called them a bunch. He said, basically, I hope they take their money, and that I hope they're really content, the bunch of slobs. Kushluk, in a certain sense, his work is capitalist censorship at work in order to match market demand. He cannot alienate with his work, so he can only make the negative critique. Maybe. I don't, I'm not inside the guy's head, and I don't know what he feels. I don't watch something like hypernormalization and get the sense that this guy is particularly concerned about alienating anyone. Excuse me. What other movies have I watched lately? What is the movie we watched last weekend?
Um,
I'm like totally blanking.
yeah, I have to look up the name.
It was pretty good though, right?
Mm-hmm. It's called The Dark and the Wicked.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, we watched a movie last weekend called The Dark and the Wicked. It looks like my stream just died. And now it's back. Okay. Sorry if I dropped off there for a minute. Yeah. Immortal Science of Hauntology says um, his work is publicly funded through the BBC. That brings different limitations, perhaps, but they're bureaucratic mainly. And I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure how much the BBC is actively involved in, like, in censoring Adam Curtis's work. I don't know if that's. I don't know what the situation is there. It seems to me he criticizes whatever he wants. I don't. It doesn't seem to me as though there are any real restrictions, as far as I can tell. I do love how he takes the piss out of Silicon Valley, for sure. Josie Posey, I think the corollary he made between late Soviet society and late U.S. empire is basically correct, if a little reductive. If that's what he set out to do with this thing, he nailed it. Well, right. What would I say about that? The insinuation seems to be that the United States is on the brink of collapse in the same way that the Soviet Union was. So we'll see. We'll see how that pans out. I do gotta say, based on recent events in the United States and based on the legislation that was passed, which is basically extremely neutered, in my opinion, we did not get the $15 minimum wage due to the refusal to cooperate of certain Democratic politicians, Kristen Sinema, Joe Manchin, to name a few. It's not looking good, folks. I don't know what else to say. And people who are reflexively defending the Democratic Party at this point should not be taken seriously. If they cannot pass a minimum wage increase at this point, the Democratic Party is basically worthless as a whole. Gonna get some water. I'm still working my way through Debt, the First 5,000 Years by David Graeber. Graeber's, if you're not familiar, he's an anthropologist and an anarchist. Also kind of known for hanging out with the, I guess at that time, yeah, like the MMT crowd, modern monetary theory crowd. So he has somewhat idiosyncratic views, even relative to other anarchists, right? It nonetheless, it is a fascinating book. I would recommend reading it critically. If anything, for the anthropological perspective. I'm trying to think about. I don't know. I don't quite see eye to eye with Graeber in certain respects. I appreciate his anthropological work. I feel as though he speaks of communism in such broad terms that it kind of renders it basically meaningless, or if not meaningless, it's a platitude. Yeah, I don't quite see eye to eye with him on that. Basically, Graeber says that anytime someone acts in accordance with the principle from each according to their ability to each according to their needs, that is communist. And it's parsing everything at this individualistic level, to me, instead of asking the question, well, how can that sort of activity be sustained at the mass level? That strikes me as, I mean, I know the term is overused, but seems like a bit of a rad lib to me. Because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but he doesn't think like communism, in the way that he defines it, can be sustained at a systemic level in any serious way. He thinks there has to be a sort of balance, and there's always going to be markets, and there's always going to be, capitalistic behavior and communistic behavior. And I just think parsing everything at the level of individual behavior is like, you're already starting from a false way of framing things. If someone is able to do something, if someone is able to maintain a certain behavioral pattern, it's because material conditions have enabled that to be possible in the first place. I mean, does that make sense to people? Well, I'm going to sneeze. We're I gotta sneeze. I can't get it going though. Oh my god. You ever have a sneeze you can't like bring to fruition and it drives you insane? Yeah, Graeber has an anti. Excuse me. Graeber had an anti-imperialist perspective for sure. I mean, especially with the anti-globalization movement and his posture towards the IMF. So it's not like I totally wholesale reject everything he says. And obviously I haven't finished the book, so I'm about 150 pages in right now. Dry Jacket, I don't have insight on any of this stuff, just an 8-year-old son and a lot of fear regarding where we will be by the time he graduates high school. That is, yeah, I totally get what you're saying, and I think your concern is justified, and what the reflex to be like, oh, everything's going to be okay is I think we got to look this thing in the eye. I think we got to look into the abyss and basically admit that things are bad right now. And that's how we can actually that's how you're able to come up with solutions, is if you have a realistic understanding of what the problem is to begin with. So, yeah, things are looking bad right now. But also what I would say is something has to give. This is a holding pattern. It cannot hold indefinitely. It can't be like this forever. Something's going to give. The question is, when things collapse, are people going to be mentally prepared to pick up the pieces? Right. Toby says the first step to solving a problem is realizing you have one. Not only that, I think we need to understand the scope of the problem, because that's really where ideological predilections come into play. The liberal perspective is, yeah, these things are problems, like wealth inequality is a problem. The fact that wages haven't been commensurate with productivity since the early 70s is a problem. The way that systemic racism is a problem, right? But the manner in which these problems are framed is ideological in nature, and that's the thing you need to keep in mind, is that what liberals will do, liberals will box everything in, keep everything in these neat little boxes, and say, we're going to address that problem with X, Y, and Z reforms. And oftentimes what happens when Democrats propose reforms is that they're a mixed bag. They'll help certain things, and they'll make other things worse because of the way the legislation is framed and the compromises they have to make along the way. And like, there is this whole situation where, I mean, we have to recognize that Democrats are part of the problem. Like, they're the ones who propose tough on crime legislation, you know. So the way in which you frame these problems is very important, and it's essential to understand that at this point in our contemporary moment, that it's the scope of the problem is more pervasive than simply we can address this with X, Y, and Z legislative reforms. It's not going to happen. We've seen this with this recent stimulus bill. We've seen that Congress cannot get it together enough to pass something comprehensive in terms of any kind of reform. So then the question is, if you can't address things through legislative action, what do you do at that point? And liberals don't have a good response to that question. You need to go to leftists for responses to that. And the response might be, well, we need to build networks of mutual aid. I think that's absolutely correct. That's one little part of the solution, because mutual aid cannot be sustained without material conditions enabling them to be sustained. So if you have a major breakdown in the supply chain in the United States, you are fucked. One effort I think is very important right now is unionizing Amazon. It's critically important. Another thing I think is critically important is building an actual labor movement that is independent and autonomous and not beholden to the Democratic Party. I mean, so Kushlik says, I mean, they're bourgeois parties. They serve bourgeois interests within an imperial bourgeois state. Yes, but the problem is that's circular reasoning, because you're already building your conclusion into the premise of what you think with these labels. The question is, because I don't at face value disagree with what you're saying. The problem is, Well, for starters, if you speak that way to your average person, they won't have any fucking clue what you're talking about. So that's a problem. So you got to meet people where they are. There always so here's point number 2. There always has to be, if you're pointing out the problem with electoralism, you need to also propose concrete solutions to the problem you're opposing. And that's a problem I've had personally, because I don't know. I don't know what the solution is at this point. And so it sounds, oftentimes when I'm criticizing things, it sounds like I'm completely black-pilled. And that's not the case. I just don't think electoralism is going to be the route to salvation, you know? So I'm criticizing myself as well as that statement. But what, you know, I have sort of vaguely alluded to where I think the solution lies, which is we have to strengthen the labor movement. It has to be autonomous. It has to basically be like the posture of the labor movement towards Democrats should be one of a very tenuous sort of, you know, we might work with them on certain things, but by and large, they're irrelevant to what we're trying to do. Zab says, saying Democrats are garbage isn't help winning over Democrats. I'm not interested in winning over Democrats. I know that sounds kind of harsh, but people who are committed Democrats will not be on my side on most of these issues. And Zab says there are more Democrats than there are leftists, and that's correct. But my posture towards Democrats, committed Democrats, because I think we have to be more precise when we talk about these groups. I think a lot of people who have voted for Democrats can be picked off. I don't think the media strata that is beholden to the Democratic Party on Twitter and the media in general, they're not going to be swayed by anything I have to say. That's for sure. And to think otherwise would be delusional. But if we're talking about everyday people, most of the Democrats I know have a lot of problems with the Democratic Party. I'm just saying. Most of the Democrats I know wouldn't wince if I criticize the Democratic Party. I come from a family of lifelong Democrats. And yes, there is a tendency to reflexively defend Democrats when they're attacked by Republicans, but in general, a lot of Democrats have issues with the Democratic Party. So it just depends on what group you're talking about. If we're talking about the Democratic establishment, if we're talking about, you know, the media strata that sort of bolsters and supports liberal ideology, obviously I'm not interested in swaying those people. But I do think a few Democrats, quote unquote, a few registered Democrats can be picked off. And I think there are a lot of registered Democrats that are already inclined towards, you know, the left end of the spectrum. And it's important to keep in mind that half of the people in this country don't even fucking vote. So they have already rightfully accepted the premise that politicians don't care about them, right? I'm going to say that again just because I think I dropped off. Half of people, half of the nation's citizenry in this country don't even bother to vote. So, Democrats will blame them for electoral losses, but I think that half of the country has rightfully understands that the vast majority of politicians don't give a fuck about them and basically use them as little pieces on a chessboard. And so they've rightfully accepted that premise. Well, they're already primed to be radicalized. If they believe that, you're already primed to be radicalized. So I think there's a lot more opportunities for radicalizing the 50% of people who don't even bother to vote than there is for committed so-called Democrats. That's just my 2 cents. I mean, people are trying to talk about a vanguard party. What the fuck does that even look like in 2021? I'm genuinely curious what you think that looks like. And I'm not trying to be hostile. I'm confused. I'm confused about how to go about even doing that and what that even means in 2021. Okay, Hoystein is saying, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, by the way. Hoystein is saying, if you want to pick off the Democrats, you have to break their voter blocks. Trump ran on the wall. You need to poach voters from both parties to do what those voters want done. I don't get what you're trying to say there. I don't think Democrats. You have to break their voter blocks. Okay, I agree with the first part of your statement, but I don't understand what you're trying to say with the second part. Trump ran on the wall. You need to poach voters from both parties to do what those voters want done. I mean, I would be interested to see actual figures for how many people actually supported the wall. I just don't. I certainly don't think appealing to nationalism is the way to go. And people voted Trump out, so I'm not sure I get your. I'm not sure I accept that premise. Well, things are getting spicy. Is this spicy enough for you? So Lennon's cat is saying, You need something. You need something like a workers' party. Um, yeah, which isn't a Bolshevik party. America can't have that, but it can have a workers' party that works on an independent political program which doesn't dilute itself towards the DNC. I don't necessarily disagree. How do you get, but are you talking about an electoral party? Because then the question is, how do you um, how do you get it? How do you get past all these brick walls that third parties run into? And if you're not talking about an electoral party, then the question is, how do you get people to take you seriously? Because I mean, like the Chapo boys are right when they say you got to meet people where they are, and most people understand politics proper to be electoral in nature, so they won't understand what you're talking about if you don't meet them at that point. And I mean, my response to that, I don't know what you think, but my response to that is meet people. Yes, meet people where they are. But I think, as I've alluded to previously, 50% of people don't have any faith in the electoral system at all. So they've already reached the appropriate conclusion about that problem. And then what else can you do to appeal to those people? I think you have to do labor organizing at that point. But what does labor organizing in 2021 look like? Because everyone is hyper atomized. Okay, Hoystein, half the population wanted something done about the border. Who wants the elites to be able to import scabs at will by overthrowing other nations to our south. Well, to me, you are sounding more and more like some kind of reactionary, and and I will allow it for now, but I don't accept this framework even remotely. First off, I don't accept that half the population accepted things in these terms. And if they did, they're wrong. You need to be prepared for the possibility that some large amount of people are simply wrong about something because they've been misled. But this framework where we say elites importing scabs, I don't really accept that. First off, if you're talking about elites, that strikes me as some kind of conspiratorial mindset where you have some cabal of people who are sort of plotting to do something evil. That's not what's going on here. The modus operandi of capitalism is the endless drive for profit. There's no conspiracy. Everyone is just doing that. So the wealthy people in this country, there's no conspiracy. They openly do these things. And to say that there is some like small little cabal of elites that are sort of controlling everything, you misunderstand the situation and your conclusions are going to be wrong. If those are your premises, the conclusions you draw are going to be misguided. So we do have a situation where global capitalism has created uneven economic development, right? There's no elites who are intentionally doing this. It's just the endless drive for profit. So you again, you have a situation where a system of global capitalism has created a situation of uneven economic development, which means workers are going to try to go where the best opportunities are. And so calling those people scabs is fucking ridiculous. I'm sorry. I just don't accept that. Like, the idea that people trying to seek better opportunities because a system of global capitalism has fucked over their country, to call those people scabs, you're living on another planet. We're not looking at things the same way. We're operating from totally different frameworks. I'm going to have to calm down. I'm going to take a deep breath. I've got some granola to make me feel better. Okay, so if you accept that it's mainly an issue of perverse incentives, which Hoystein is now saying, it seems to me like backtracking, because that's not what you said initially. We're talking about people that are wrong due to the lack of information. Okay, that's basically what I said, right? If that's the premise under which they're operating, which is like we need to put up a wall or whatever, my whole thing would be, you don't need to speak that language to appeal to those people. You need to dispel those misconceptions in a way that's non-threatening. And again, Trump got voted out, so I don't think that narrative was ultimately appealing enough to actually have any kind of... I mean, Trump's whole posture towards that didn't really have a cohesive strategy, right? He's kind of all over the place. So he wasn't really an effective politician, even for the things he supposedly supported. Listen, a scab is someone who crosses a picket line, who crosses a picket line while there are workers striking for better wages or better benefits or whatever. A scab is someone who crosses the picket line and goes and works for the company despite a strike, an ongoing strike. So we need to be careful about concept creep and calling people scabs who don't deserve that label. I don't even really accept that Trump got working class votes in any sense that's like above what your normal conservative gets. I don't I don't really think it's true. If you can point me towards figures that support that narrative, I guess I'll take a look at them. Kushlook is asking, do you think Strasserism is possible in the U.S.? I think anyone talking about Strasserism is on another fucking planet. I mean, let's look. Let's look at this fucking. What's his name? I can't remember this bastard's name. Josh Hawley. Josh Hawley pretends to be Josh Hawley is a conservative politician who pays lip service to improving the conditions of working people. Let's consider the possibility that so-called right-wing populism is a viable project here. Take a look at Josh Hawley's vote. Take a look at what he voted on for the $15 minimum wage. He voted against it. Spoiler alert. So much for so-called economic populism or right-wing populism or whatever the fuck you want to call it. I mean, it's just a ridiculous idea. Yeah. Yeah, Seraphim. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Holly said that bullshit to ape off Trump, get elected, try for higher office in a few years. That's exactly what he's doing. He's a cynical person. Be hard pressed to believe anything that guy says, anything that comes out of his mouth. He's like every other fucking career politician. He pretends to be some kind of renegade. And he's just like, he's a piece of shit just like any other Republican politician. Eastern European is because of my tracksuit. I accept that. I take it as a compliment. Hoystein is asking, okay, so if we're in the middle of a national debate over if people should have a $15 minimum wage, where should we put the picket line? I don't think you're jumping around in your logic here, because a picket line is when workers have come together and decided to strike, decided to withhold their labor for a specific purpose. So if you're saying that we should have a national strike over the $15 minimum wage issue, I would say you're putting the cart before the horse, because no one's going to do that. So you'd have to get a critical mass of workers on board with that project before you even begin to think about a national, before you even begin to think about like a mass strike or a picket line. Like, what are you even talking about? I'm sorry if I'm like misunderstanding what you're asking, but like, you're putting the cart before the horse, if you ask me. Yeah, Josie Posey. I like that username. There's not really a picket line because it's not a strike, exactly. There can be a political strike, but only parties, but the only parties involved are senators. It's a party line at that point. I don't know what you mean by that, but yeah, like basically, in order for there to be a picket line, you have to have some kind of labor movement, which we don't really have right now. Yeah, the MOOC is correct. In America, many think it's illegal to discuss organizing a strike, and they're told it is. I think you're touching on a big problem for sure. I mean, do we want to discuss Taft-Hartley? Taft-Hartley is a big reason why the labor movement is so defanged here in the U.S. Zab is saying, I reiterate that Democrats are not as bad as Republicans, and they can be swayed left. Many Democrats aren't what you guys are describing. But the problem, okay, so framing things in terms of whether these individuals are bad and these individuals are good. And I know I lapse into this at various points in time where I'm like, you know, obviously Josh Hawley is a piece of shit, if I'm talking about that particular individual. But I'm really just using him as an example of the farce that is the notion of right-wing populism, right? None of these people are authentically populist. I mean, I don't even really think that term has any meaning, has any real substance to it. So, but you're saying, okay, Democrats aren't as bad as Republicans. They can be swayed left. If they can, that's good. My criticism mainly is about congressional Democrats. You know, I don't really have much in the way to offer as far as criticism of your average run-of-the-mill person who votes for Democrats. So we need to make a distinction there. I mean, I come from a family of people who have consistently voted for Democrats. So if I do criticize those people, I'm criticizing my own kind, basically. I think, I mean, to sum up what I guess I'm trying to say, I think I basically agree with the premise that change has to come from the bottom up. And the place to start with that is rebuilding the labor movement. The unionization efforts going on with Amazon are, that's a good sign for sure. So it's not as though things are completely fucking hopeless. I hope I'm not giving that message across. It's just we have a long way to go, and we're deep in the shit right now. You have to sort of acknowledge that. Yeah, Zab is saying, I'm talking about regular Democrats. Well, if that's who you're talking about, you know, people who vote Democratic, you're talking about a very diverse coalition of people who happen to think all sorts of different things. And to talk about them in such broad strokes is probably not very helpful. Now, when I criticize liberals, I'm usually referring to either the sort of media apparatus of the Democratic Party, or I'm talking about politicians themselves. I'm not talking about everyday people. I'm also not really super interested in trying to sort of reflexively appeal to the conservative the conservative predilections of older people, because those people will be dead in 10 to 20 years. That's what old means. So we need to invest in the future. We need to build a movement, a sustainable movement that is viable 50 years from now. I need some water. This is gonna be well, I don't know how people are gonna feel about this, but I'm getting kind of hungry, and I got some leftover Popeyes, so I'm gonna eat it. This granola ain't cutting it. I need some meat. Oh my god. Yeah, and I might be perceived as being a bit combative right now with certain people in the chat. I just want to say, like, if I'm misconstruing what you're trying to say, I'm sorry. You know, it's just kind of tricky doing this in real time, reading your comments and responding to them. I'm gonna get my hands all greasy. That's no fun. Yeah, I can't go wrong with Popeyes. I gotta say, uh, this is leftover from yesterday. It's the first time in maybe at least 6 months that we've gotten Popeyes chicken, and I really missed it. Let's really shift the conversation towards Popeyes right now. I'm gonna change the name of the stream. Let's talk about Taft-Hartley. With apologies to vegans. The Taft-Hartley Act was a piece of legislation pertaining to union activity. It was passed in the 40s. I believe it was basically passed with full support of Republicans and enough support among Democrats and this is quite interesting, that they were actually able to override a veto by then President Truman. I think that's correct. It was Truman, right? Yes, Truman. And so the legislation itself, you need to keep in mind the political situation in the United States is quite interesting at the time, because you have the president who has refused to sign this bill, and then you have enough congressional support that they're actually able to override the veto. How many votes do you need to override a veto? I don't remember. It's not trivial. It would have to be a pretty sizable effort to among the legislators to override the president's veto. But I guess we should talk about what's actually in the legislation, because it's kind of a mixed bag. But there are some critical things in there that kind of neuter the labor movement. So for starters, this is all, Taft-Hartley was passed in the midst of a number of strikes, right? That were fairly, it was a bit unlike what had happened previously. It was basically a wave of labor strikes, a wave of what they call wildcat strikes. Do people know what a wildcat strike is? We actually saw the teachers' strike in West Virginia was technically a wildcat strike. Basically, a wildcat strike is a strike because it doesn't actually have the approval of the leadership of the union. So I guess a lot of the strikes that were going on in the 40s were indeed wildcat strikes. I'm trying to find the legislation itself. It's probably just missing it. And I'm also trying to eat chicken, so. Let's talk about what's actually in the legislation. Basically, you have this you have this mass movement of striking going on, and Congress saw fit to do something about it. So Taft-Hartley enacts certain prohibitions, or it prohibits certain practices for labor unions. One major thing it prohibits is sympathy strikes, so-called sympathy strikes. So, sympathy strikes are either strikes, which you would be withholding your labor, or there are boycotts. You could also have a boycott, which is when you refuse to buy from a particular company for some political reason, because you disagree with how they're treating their workers, for instance. So when you do a so-called sympathy strike or coordinate a boycott in that regard, it's like there are attempts to influence another employer as opposed to your employer. Let's say if you're the worker here. Now I'm reading from this information here. You have to take everything with a grain of salt, because it's like everything is going to be framed in sort of pro-capitalist terminology, but a sort of derogatory statement for what I'm trying to talk about is they called it blackmail, essentially. Blackmail picketing. So the Taft-Hartley Act also prohibits secondary boycotts, which are used to encourage employees of a secondary employer to strike against their employer in order to get that employer to stop doing business with the company that's sort of at the center of that action. It also outlaws jurisdictional strikes. So and or boycotts. These are strikes or boycotts which are attempts to force an employer to give work to one union over another. So there's this whole range of activity that is now outlawed because of Taft-Hartley. And it's sort of, you could see how Taft-Hartley really defanged the labor movement in certain respects. This document I'm reading says the effects of Taft-Hartley were considered to be both negative and immediate. This was especially true for unions who were struggling to organize in the South. Two of the main unions who were struggling to organize in the South and who felt the effects of the Taft-Hartley Act were the Amalgamated Clothing Workers of America and the Textile Workers Union of America. A year before the passage of Taft-Hartley, the Congress of Industrial Organization, CIO, was working on Operation Dixie. Operation Dixie was an ambitious effort to unionize Southern workers that cost the CIO over $2 million. The leaders of the CIO believed if they could unionize the largest industrial sector of the South, cotton textile workers, then they could effectively organize the entire region. Both the ACWA and the TWUA participated in the effort, contributing funds and over 200 organizers. However, failure of Operation Dixie was one of the major effects of Taft-Hartley. When the campaign finally ended in 1953, only 15% of Southern textile workers had been effectively unionized. So you could see how Taft-Hartley really prevents coordinated union activity in certain respects. And I'm going to eat some chicken now. Yeah. Came for the fried chicken. That's the allure. And then I get you to learn about the labor movement. Existential anarchist. I like your username. Walter Benjamin. Who I don't know if everyone knows who Walter Benjamin is. Walter Benjamin was a writer associated with the Frankfurt School. His most well-known essay is, it's called Age of Art, or The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. It's a very interesting piece. I recommend everybody check that out. But anyway, Walter Benjamin, here's what Existential Anarchist has to say. Walter Benjamin called strikes one of the rare legal forms of violence to emphasize the power of workers. Blackmail sounds cool in this context. Yeah, I don't know. Because is a strike a form of violence? Is it violence if it's self-defense? That would be the question, because I think a strike is a form of self-defense. The coercive act of aggression is placing workers in a situation where they really have no other choice but to work for hourly wages. And I think blackmail, well, I don't think a sympathy strike is a form of blackmail. Certainly not, because it's done out in the open. So how can you call that blackmail? Blackmail is when you go to someone and you say, "Hey, listen, I got some dirt on you. Now, if you don't pay me some money, I'm going to tell everybody about this dirt I got on you. That's blackmail. I don't understand how a sympathy strike constitutes blackmail. I think it's just a derogatory way that business owners framed the situation because they felt that they were going to lose money. Yeah. I guess it depends on how you define the term. I don't know. I wouldn't. Let's put it this way. For rhetorical purposes, I wouldn't call it violence. Lennon's cat says, how do you find energy to do your day job plus YouTube? Well, I don't always. And the past couple of weeks in particular have been kind of stressful at work and just a lot going on. And so I haven't been as active with the channel. So it's tough sometimes. And I think we all got to take care of ourselves, right? So I try to keep that in mind for myself. On the other hand, I enjoy streaming. I enjoy interacting with people. So, I don't know. It kind of fulfills like a social function for me. Well, let's put it this way. If a company mass produces food and there's a starving person who they don't necessarily associate with but are aware of, and that person is just on the sidewalk starving to death. Meanwhile, this factory is producing an abundance of food. Is it violence not to feed the person? What do people think? As I'm stuffing chicken in my face. Yeah, I don't know. It depends on your philosophical framework, right? Obviously, if that person is trying to take some food for them to eat so that they can live, and then the police come in and beat the shit out of them and arrest them, obviously that's violence. Protection of private property inherently entails violence, right? So when justified, and of course a libertarian will say, a right-wing libertarian will say, oh well, um, protecting private property is justified violence. But I disconnected here. Great. Am I back on? The stream died there for a second. But anyway, a right-wing libertarian would say protecting private property is a justified form of violence, whereas allowing workers to organize and strike for better working conditions, I'm not sure if libertarians would say that's justified. But I have heard them call it coercive, which is pretty rich. It's pretty funny, if you ask me, when you consider the actual power dynamics at play. The what was I going to say here? Oh, touching back on Taft-Hartley, it's important to keep in mind also that there was a pretty big anti-communist element to Taft-Hartley itself. I believe, basically, well, let me look this up before I don't want to say something that's not true. There are amendments to Taft-Hartley that require union leaders to file affidavits with the Department of Labor declaring that they were not supporters of the Communist Party and had no relationship with any organization seeking to overthrow the United States government by force or by any illegal or unconstitutional means. And so, of course, the issue with that is, you know, there's this whole issue of, like, obviously you should be able to you should be able to be a member of the Communist Party if you want to. So, of course, this was in the middle of the Cold War. And there was, this is kind of like when McCarthyism was going on. So there was kind of another Red Scare at the time. But basically, I think that's unconstitutional because I think it violates your First Amendment. I think it violates freedom of speech. You should be able to advocate for for communism if you want to, and still be a union leader. It's ridiculous. So that just still to this day prevents unions from really coordinating with one another in certain ways. So we have to keep it in mind. And if there is a serious, I mean, I know reforms are a pretty tenuous prospect at this point. Undoing Taft-Hartley would benefit the labor movement. So, I'm not opposed to reforms, but they have to be coordinated with a labor movement, and they have to be done on certain terms. But yeah, it seems to me Taft-Hartley needs to be repealed. What should I do now? Oh, I think I might be winding down now. It might be a good time to go for a walk. Kind of a nice day around here, relatively speaking. Might be good to get some fresh air. So if you've been watching this whole time, thank you for joining me. I might be doing some streaming again soon. We'll see. I got something. I have a video dropping later tonight, so stay tuned for that. I think you'll like it. And yeah, should be hearing more from me in the future. Just a obligatory Patreon plug here. If you like what I do, please consider supporting me on Patreon. And if you're interested in that, I have a number of different tiers. Check it out. See what works for you. Oftentimes you will get early access to podcasts that I put out. Yeah. You get weekly updates. These are things you get for $1 a month. You get more things if you subscribe to a higher tier. Usually it's stuff I unlock eventually. I don't like to leave things behind a paywall. So if that sounds up your alley, check out patreon.com/Nightmare Masterclass. If you like the music at the beginning of the stream, go to nightmaremasterclass.bandcamp.com and check that out.